Hello and welcome to the Our Giant Leap podcast, presented by the Space Generation Advisory Council. Our Giant Leap discusses diversity, gender equality, and inclusion issues within the global aerospace industry. My name is Sama, and I am your host for today's special episode. After many insightful interviews with our invaluable podcast guests, we aim today on shedding the light on the various issues discussed around diversity and inclusion in the space sector and highlight the tangible outcomes and takeaways that we learned so far. Our guests on today's special panel are advocates of diversity and inclusion within the space sector. They are the working force behind this podcast, and they come to share with us their experience and lessons learned from all of their interactions with the domain experts and fellow diversity advocates. So, welcome our own and only, our Giant Leap podcast team, Judith, Laura, Amin, and Tanya. I am so delighted to have you here with us today. So, around the table, could you please introduce yourselves and tell us briefly what motivated you to join the Space Generation Advisory Council and its Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group? I'll start with Judith.
Hello, Sama, and hello to everyone who's listening. My name is Judith, and as Sama said, I am part of the Our Gently podcast team. A briefly introduction, I come from France. I have a background in business administration, and I now live and work in Germany. During my studies, I wrote my bachelor dissertation on the space mining industry, and that's how I got to dive into the space industry. It was at the time in 2018, I believe, and that's how I got to learn about the Space Generation Advisory Council, and I began volunteering there, first in the Our Giant Leap initiative, which then became the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group.
Awesome, thank you. Next, I'll go to Amin.
Hello everyone, my name is Amin. I come from Tunisia and I'm finishing my studies here in France, in Toulouse, in aerospace engineering. I'm lucky because I got to know co-lead of the Our Giant Leap, like Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group, Yulia and I got lucky because I got to see how passionate she is and how passionate about the problem of diversity and gender equality in the space industry. And then I participated in HGAC France in last May. And after that, I was so motivated to be part of the team and to try to shed the light on these problems and on the inclusion problems within the space industry. And I heard from Yulia that the podcast team is missing a member, and I was so motivated to join the team. And since then, it's been such an amazing journey.
Thank you, Amin. Tanya?
Hello everyone, I'm Tanya from Mumbai, India. I'm a physics graduate and I'll be starting my master's at the University of Luxembourg's Interdisciplinary Space Masters course this September. I joined SGAC in 2020 and I came across it from the social media where I came across some really interesting projects and events which happen, and the exposure and network opportunities that one has is incredible. I joined the Our Giant Leap podcast team this year, and it was because of what opportunity it offers and the inclusive opportunity that has in between the diversity and gender equality project group. It was a really unique initiative that gave a platform for each individual to speak his or her or their opinion and views for the space industry.
Thank you, Tanya. And finally, Laura?
Hello everyone, I'm Laura Luman. I come from France. I'm a materials engineer working in the space industry. So I've been passionate about space since I was a child because my father has an astronomy association. So I was used to looking at the stars. And for my master thesis, I did my internship at the European Space Agency Astronaut Center in Cologne, the EAC. And this is when I knew that I really wanted to pursue my career in space. And then I got to know the Space Generation Advisory Council for one of their events in France, in Lille. And I've learned about the Our Giant Leap Association and the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group. And I really wanted to combine my passion for space technologies to a cause that mattered to me. And as I'm an advocate for a more inclusive and diverse industry, I was really happy to engage in the podcast. So now I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Laura, and welcome everyone once again to this episode. So, the Our Giant Leap podcast is a relatively new initiative. Judith, you have seen the birth of this podcast. Can you please tell us more how it started and what inspired its creation?
Sure, Sama. So the Our Giant Leap initiative began in 2019 and then became 2 years later the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group in 2021. We launched the Our Giant Leap podcast in 2022 and published the first episode over a year ago, which was an interview with Christian Jones from the United States. The idea behind the podcast is to bring light to a person's career in the aerospace industry. We want to raise awareness and to come up with tangible outcomes during each episode. Our goal is that the listeners have takeaways at the end of an episode. It can be tools, for example, or tips, documentation recommended by the guest, so that they have these takeaways after listening.
Thank you, Judith. This is very interesting. So, in general, the space industry has been historically criticized for its lack of diversity. I mean, on top of what Judith said, can you tell us how the Our Giant Leap podcast initiative aims to promote diversity and equality in the space sector?
Definitely, that's a very interesting question. So, the way I see it is like the main problem in the space industry, and honestly in any other industry, is the fear of being alone when you first start something. For example, when you try to start something and you want to get to a new industry, let's say the space industry, and you think that you're going to be alone, you're going to be the only woman there, you're going to be the only African who's going to study this subject in your university or something like that. So you are faced with that feeling of fear of trying something new, of being alone, not knowing what to do. Nobody else did it before you. How am I going to do it? And all these questions build up to be a barrier between you and realizing your dream and being a member of the space industry. So, what did our Giant Leap podcast do? Gives an insight about all the amazing pioneers who have different background stories and who are doing an impact on the space industry. So, what we want is that our listeners all over the world feel that they are welcome, that there is people out there in the space industry who have the same background story as them, with whom they can identify. And these feelings make them feel more comfortable. And when they feel more comfortable, they can participate in the space industry. And by that, the space industry become more inclusive because you will have more people from different backgrounds participating. So to summarize, what the Our Giant Leap podcast do is it gives an insight about different background stories that you can have in the space industry. And by that, it inspires the listeners and the students and everyone around the world to be part of it.
I can't agree more. Having support and role models is really a very important aspect to inspire the talent and the next generation space enthusiast. So, to that point, Laura, in what ways do you envision diversity and equality enhancing the space sector's overall growth and potential?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. So, for me, diversity is synonym of creativity and open-mindedness because, as Amin said before, if you have people with different gender that come from a different country, you will combine all of the great ideas that I have, and it can only lead to growth. So, for me, it's really important to have diversity in a company, and it makes a solid foundation for this company. And also, gender equality is no option. We need to treat everyone the same, no matter their gender. So we shouldn't even have to address this subject because it should be really normal to be open-minded with everyone. And also for me, if it's in the industry or other fields, once diversity and equality are achieved, there is no limit to growth. So to answer your question, I think it will only have a positive impact on the industry and the space growth.
100% true. And on top of basically what you said, Laura, there's also other aspects of the overall growth and potential. Like, for example, the education and awareness that are key components of driving such a change. And especially that it comes with the access to resources and opportunities that may or may not be even. So, a question to Tanya. Since you talked to some of our guests about these issues, from what you learned and your personal experience, what are the intakes that you can share with us on the various barriers that might hinder the participation of the underrepresented groups in the space sector?
So one of the main things that comes top of my head is kids are the most curious people in comparative to adults, and it is very important to introduce basic space education or even awareness regarding this industry, or normal interactive activities that kids can be a part of, and which or any projects that they can be involved into, which helps to keep their curiosity intact. The other thing that involves in making or having inclusive nature for each and every individual, or you know possibly someone from an economically lower background, which hinders their access to higher education. But today, the number of scholarships that are available to fund one's higher education, I believe, makes it easier to gain access to some really good courses. There are such good online free courses that helps to reach out to different demography, or possibly we have libraries which have a really easy access to some good books. And the most important thing that I believe is also communicating. I believe there are a lot of tribal communities that are still behind or lacks very basic necessity, but the amount of knowledge that one can impart through the spread of mouth, that makes it much more interactive for even people to have a normal communication around this. So I believe communication is one of the main gaps that we can just bridge in, not just in industry as space, but also in the main important aspect of education, that it is really important to communicate and share this knowledge that helps us to bridge the whole gap. And also it is important to see that we are trying to solve every problem, and we just need to try to solve every problem through a lens of inclusion for people of all socioeconomical background. And yeah, one of the main things that every guest that I've spoken to just highlights, that's how scholarships are important, and how capacity building between the kids is really important and plays a crucial role in taking their dreams forward.
Thank you, Tanya. That's absolutely true. And for those of our audience who are interested in specifically this topic, they can basically go back to our previous episodes and listen more in depth about addressing these various opportunities and learn more about the scholarships and how to get them. So, aside from education and awareness, there's also other issues such as addressing the biases and the systematic issues that might basically be a lot complex to solve. So, I mean, what kind of tangible outcomes can you share with us from your interview with the various domain professionals in this regard?
Yeah, this is a very important problem to tackle in the space industry because the systematic issues become like a huge barrier in to do anything. Like you want to do something, there is a systematic problem about it, people don't want to do it, and then you find yourself in a vicious cycle and where you can't do anything. And when talking about biases and systematic issues, two interviews come to mind. The first with Julie Clavou. And what Julie actually told us, what she taught us is that tackling these problems starts from a personal level. You cannot change the space industry overnight, but what you can do is change yourself. So, for everyone out there who is listening to this podcast right now, growth starts from a personal point of view. You start by tackling your own biases, your own point of views, and strong opinions, and putting them into perspective. Why do I believe this? Why do I believe that, for example, women should not be in the space industry? Is there any validity to my opinion? And once you put that into perspective and you start thinking about it, you will come up to the obvious conclusion that there is no such limit for what a woman can do in the space industry. So why should we have biases about it? Why should I think? Why should I have that opinion? And once you do that, once we liberate ourselves from these biases, and if everyone do that, then obviously the space industry will get rid of those. Another tangible outcomes that I really have close, like a big part in my heart, is from my interview with Franco, because the queer community is dealing with a lot of problems, not only in the space industry, but everywhere. Lack of representation. They still have problems, get more included into industry and everything. And it's because of that that the interview with Franco really shared great insight that you should not be afraid of who you are. You should not be afraid, and you should not attempt to change who you are to fit in the industry. The industry should grow and be more inclusive so that you find yourself comfortable within the industry. So the main point is be who you are and go out there and fight for yourself and fight for your beliefs. And if the industry have biases, then that's on the industry. That's not on you. And your main objective is to change that by standing for yourself, standing for your community, going out there, making the noise, taking the fight, and try to do something about it. So even if biases and systematic issues represent a big problem right now, and I can see the like the first light of solution. A lot of people now have stronger representation. A lot of initiatives such as our Giant Leap podcast and the Diversity and Gender Equality Project group are out there and trying to make it even for everyone. So yeah, this is very important. Don't feel that you are alone. You are not. Go out there and be who you are. And if you have a dream, then it's worth fighting for it. And as I said before, if the industry have a bias about it, have a bias about you, have strong opinion about you, then it's time to change that. And that won't be changed if we stay in stagnation and don't do anything about it.
Wow, I mean, thank you. This is such a powerful message because indeed, change just does start from within. So, another aspect that I'd like to basically highlight in today's panel is space exploration, since it's a mission that requires all forces to be joined together to advance the cause. A question to Laura. Could you share with us any powerful stories or anecdotes that highlight the importance of diversity and equality in the context of space exploration?
Yes, of course. So when you say space exploration, Sama, it makes me think about the interview with Irene Selvanathan. So she founded her company Neurospace. So this company is created in the context of the new space, and they are building a moon rover. And this interview really had an impact on me because she was saying that women are not yet perceived the same way as men in the industry. And sometimes they try to change themselves to better fit. But she said, no, when you're a woman with a leading position, don't be afraid of being yourself. It is what makes you special and interesting for others. And she said there are too many people who sometimes try to hide how they are, because they want to fit. And she said, be yourself. It's the best way to lead and also to have a good atmosphere with your colleagues. And it really resonated to me. And sometimes I'm also thinking I'm maybe a bit too natural for interviews. I'm myself. I don't wear a mask. But then I'm thinking, well, this is who I am. I don't lie. And I also think that you need to be yourself because life is too short to be anyone else. And so this really resonated in me. And now I'm living the way she described. And I also try to always be natural, and not wear a mask. And the second one, which had an impact on me, was the podcast with Julie Claveau. So she works at the Canadian Space Agency. And she said, if you want to be included, you have to be inclusive. I found this really true. And you think about it, but sometimes when you put words on it, it resonates a bit more. And I also think that you cannot work in space exploration if you don't listen to the ideas of others. So indeed, you have to be inclusive first because it's a good way to be a better human being, of course, but also it's good for the industry, as we said at the beginning about space exploration. So these are the two that really resonated for me.
That's really beautiful because I am also a true believer that whenever you can be your best, whenever you are yourself, you can bring the best out of you to the world. And also, when you join forces together with everyone else and you build on top of each other experience, this is where the actual change can start. So, before we actually go further, we're gonna now going to have a short break with the fun fact segment, and we will be back shortly.
The other day I was thinking, like, how did it all start, RJ, the PG? But first of all, the initiative. Do you remember how it all started?
Yes, actually, this brings us back to 2019, and right after one of the SG France events, actually the very first SG France event in Paris, there were a couple of people who were still chatting on just like delegates group, and some of people were like, "What do we do next? When's the next event? And when do we meet again?" And somebody was like, "Let's do it in Toulouse." And when I was in Toulouse, so I was like, yeah, let's do it in Toulouse. And then somebody else was like, what should be the topic? Oh, maybe it should be women in aerospace. And so that's basically how it started, with like a message on WhatsApp and sort of brainstorming. And that would attracted my attention personally. I really wanted to have some event in Toulouse about women in aerospace. I thought it was really cool. And so we wanted to make an event, right? And that's how it started,
Yeah.
July 2019.
Yeah, I remember I met you at SG France 2019, and then a couple of us. So it was mostly a French community at the time. We wanted to start this event focused on women in aerospace in Toulouse for the year after that, so for the SG France 2020. So I remember, yeah, we had a lot of really cool people invested and who also were part of the beginning of our giant leap, like I think Axel Tricot, Léa Griton, Priyanka as well, a few people who were really motivated to start this event, and then then what that later became the Giant Leap initiative. And yeah, I also remember that one of the first things was to choose the name. So Argently was really chosen amongst a wide variety of names, which I have. Actually, I found the other day the Excel sheet that we used for the votes, because at the beginning it was really the aim was to focus on women in aerospace. So we had a lot of names related to that. For example, Space Girls was proposed. Also, Women of Space Generation, Diversity and Inclusion, or yeah, things like that. All Aboard was also a name that was proposed. May Women Be With You, that's a nice one as well. Of names from all the people who wanted to create SG France 2020, and a really really nice name, Space Elves, Women Space. And then in some of them, so one of the last, those that had the biggest votes were Her Giant Leap, One Giant Leap, or Our Giant Leap, and in the
Yeah.
end, Our Giant Leap that had the biggest number of votes. But
I remember we had to even vote a couple of times. We had a couple of
yes,
rounds of votes. Yeah,
yeah,
because
yeah,
yeah. And can
yeah,
we reveal whose idea? Because we submitted, all these names are submitted by the early participants, right? Like it was all the ideas of the people. Can we
yeah.
now reveal whose idea was to have the hour gently?
Yes, so indeed, I was the one who proposed Our Giant Leap, but I think maybe it came also from just ideas from other people thinking about, of course, like one giant leap for mankind with the Apollo 11 famous sentence, and then taking it from that and saying, okay, maybe it's a giant leap for everyone. So our common giant leap for inclusion and diversity in space, and that's where also this name came from. And I'm really glad that we chose it, because it really reflects our activities today. Yeah, and it covers also, because we're not only talking about women in space now, but also more broadly diversity in space. If you look at diversity from all aspects, so yeah, I love the name that we have as the initiative now, and as the project group also.
Yeah, I agree for sure. It reflects us really well.
Yeah, and so then how, like, do you remember how also we came to go from an initiative to a project group, and what was the process like?
Yeah, it was a long way. So when we were preparing the event, and yourself and many other people were part of the organizing team of the SG France 2020, that was our giant leap, the kickoff event of the whole initiative, right? And in the preparation, we were already kind of outperforming, let's say, an event organization, right? We were making already articles and webinars and outreach campaigns and research, and then setting up kind of long going partnerships with the vision to actually make some impact. And we're in effect already functioning more or less like a project group. And then after some time, I remember vividly Pauline Deland and myself, we were talking about the fact that, okay, we're already a project group. Why don't we actually become one? Because a project group in SGC has a different status and different access to, well, to things, even such as discussion at the UN level and other things within SGC. And this topic really deserves this status, this recognition, and then more resources and more opportunities, really. So then, together with the whole team, then we started pushing towards it. So we made a first proposal, um, and then we started pushing for it. Also, Clara Morisot helped us a lot to write this proposal. I believe yourself, you also reread it, and we all edited it. And then we had 3 rounds of rewriting the proposal and talking to the HGC management, to project group coordinators, to basically involve the higher management of SGC in this decision making, and well, explain to everyone what exactly we want to do, what our vision is, how it is long term, how it's needed. There was quite a lot of back and forth, let's say, to really
Yeah.
bring everyone on board and to understand this common vision. But then in 2021, in July. So 2 years after the beginning, we became the project group officially. Yes.
Yeah, and also it was also thanks to the support of like many recommendation letters, right, from people who believed in us becoming a PG. Like I remember, I think it was Bethany Downer. She was the previous peer income lead for SJC, and she made a letter. And then maybe you remember also another couple names who,
Yeah. And
yeah,
also some of our supporters from the long-term partnerships, even from Women in Our Space, people
mhm,
who saw the preparation of the event in 2020 and who worked with us as partners and who we co-hosted webinars and stuff like that. And they saw what we want to do and how we do it. And they really supported us. And it was also thanks to this kind of support.
well, yeah, it's really nice to reflect once in a while on our journey, and yeah, and if you were to think about your best memory so far with our giant leap, what would it be?
um, well, if it's all of our journey, honestly, the hackathon last year was an amazing kind of I don't know, pinnacle of all creations. It was such a great event. So that was the first hackathon that we made. But bouncing off that, actually, and also related to the podcast, was also a very emotional moment for me when we came to record in a real studio for recording podcasts, the podcast about the hackathon with the Argently podcast team. For me, like, there was
Yeah,
a huge moment that really two huge projects that are on their own amazing and deserve all the merits, then met to talk about the hackathon on the
mm,
podcast. For me, that moment, I remember I stepped out, I even cried after the
yeah,
recording because it was so big. What about
yeah.
you?
Yeah, honestly, I think you and I have the same experience with the hackathon. For me, also, it was really a lovely experience, the hackathon, just because some of us got to meet for the first time in person. Okay, and realizing also this huge project that it is, this first unique hackathon marrying space technology and know-how, and also gender equality. It was really amazing to see that happening for the first time, and being there for this like historic moment, and that was driven by RPG. This was really amazing for me. But yeah, and now that you also talk about the podcast, and since this is also the episode number 10 of the podcast, to remember a bit our journey and coming here, and also the beginning of the podcast, I think being able to talk about this unique event, the hackathon, in the podcast special episode was really great, and it shows all the more that this podcast is really helpful to bring a new voice also to RPG, and interview different diverse members from the space industry, and I'm really glad that we get to talk about our activities every day in this podcast.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
And we're back. So, we talked before the break about the importance of mentoring and support networks for individuals entering a challenging industry. Judith, do you have any feedback that you receive from our guests that you can share with us today and with the young professionals who are struggling to find support?
Yes, thanks, Sama, for bringing this topic. Indeed, this is a topic that we discussed with our first guest, Christian Jones. So, if you're looking and interested into this topic, I would recommend to anyone listening to listen to the first episode of the Our Gently podcast. Christian shared some very valuable insights and advices about networking, which can be a big word, a bit scary if you're a student or you're a young professional and you don't really know how to do it, or what it is, or where to take the first step. One of the advices from Christian is to use social media to network. She gave the examples of LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. It is very valuable to use social media to get to know more people. Use the social media that is the most used in the country you're in. It is not the same in every country. It depends. So she gave some examples because she lives in the United States, and obviously those social media are more used there. The second advice from her is to check some networking groups that might already exist and might already be created. Some example in the US is the Society of Women Engineers or the National Society of Black Engineers. Those networking groups who are already existing can be a very good step to expand your network, to get to know and learn about people who are already part of this group. If you're a student, one advice from Christian was to get yourself a LinkedIn account and to start reaching out to people. LinkedIn, as I said, is one example, but you can check which social media would fit the best to meet people, for example, in the aerospace industry. And I would like here to add a personal advice from my side. This is actually how I got started into the space industry. When I was studying and writing my bachelor dissertation in the space industry, I didn't have any network. I didn't know anyone working in the aerospace industry. And I remember one day, after having created a LinkedIn account, I went on the social media and typed aerospace. And I began randomly contacting people who had the word aerospace in their LinkedIn biography because I wanted to meet people. I wanted to get insights from the industry, but without any network, I had to get out there and create mine. And it surprisingly worked quite well. You would be surprised to see how people are ready actually to help and ready to open also their knowledge and their experience and their network to new people who are willing and showing interest in the work that they are doing or in the industry they are working in. Doing some cold messaging can be a bit tricky, and I would like here to go back to the episode with Christian, who gave three, I think, very insightful advices about messaging people you don't know yet. The first advice is to come off personable. Introduce yourself. Say who you are, what you're doing, why you're contacting the person. It does help. The second advice is to have an understanding of the time and an appreciation of the person who's receiving the message. Know that you're going to take some time of them if you're asking for a phone call, for example, or just some time they will take to read your message or to answer you. So bring some appreciation about this time is always helpful. And the third advice, which I think is one of the most important, not only in networking in the aerospace industry, but general networking when you're getting to know more people, show that there is a two-way street. Meaning, I'm also here as a resource if you need me in any capacity. Networking is not only about what you can get from someone, it's also about what you can give to someone. And this is the two-way streets. So those are some advices if you are willing to expand a network, for example, in the aerospace industry, and you don't really know where to start. I hope that those advices can be helpful to anyone out there. And listen to the first episode if you want to get more insights. Christian Jones has some very good ones.
Judith, these are some really excellent tips. I think I echo what you said in terms of networking and reach, because often we underestimate basically the power of making baby steps. Just the fact of reaching to someone, asking for guidance, asking for help, and also for those who can give it back. This really might change the course of someone's potential or path, basically, in terms of their career, or even it could be as well their personal lives. It's very important, really, what you said about reaching to each other, helping each other, and the power of network can only get us the best that it can. So we're talking about those different tips and basically messages to our audience today. So if you can highlight some other important messages or lessons that you learned from this initiative with our audience, what would that be? So I'm gonna start with Laura.
Yeah, very interesting question. Thank you. So, I think for me, it's a sentence by Julie Claveau. She said, "What drives you can be a feeling, not always a thought." And I really like it because I'm an engineer, and usually, I'm very Cartesian, even with my life. I calculate the risk of every decision I make, and sometimes I'm just, okay, stop. I listen to my gut, and usually, when I listened to my gut by the past, I usually had more positive results than when I overthought about everything, trying to find the pros and cons. And even now, sometimes my parents are like, when I ask advice, they're like, trust your gut, trust your inside feelings, you always find a way. So now I think that this really resonates again with me because, yeah, sometimes what drives you can be a feeling and not always a thought.
That's very true. Thank you, Laura. Amin?
So for me, the best message that I got from our Giant Leap podcast till now was the one from Franco Labia. So I won't go through the details. You can also go to the other episode and listen to it. But to put it short, Franco had a hard time in South Africa getting, like, he did not feel that he belonged there. And so what he did is to take on the first flight and go to a new place when he finally found what we call home. Like, not home in the first meaning of the word, but in the deepest meaning of the word, where you feel that you really belong there and you feel comfortable around people. So the thing is, sometimes the situation, sometimes again, you don't have to adapt yourself to a situation where you don't feel like you're comfortable when you're not yourself 100%. So what you can do, you're not a tree, you can move. go ahead, try new things, try new opportunities. Don't feel afraid of trying new things. And you don't know, maybe in one of those new experience that you're gonna get, you're gonna finally find your home, finally found some place where you actually belong, when you feel appreciated for who you truly are. And again, don't be afraid to be who you truly are. Again, Franco had a different identities. They are non-binary, they have ADHD, and that didn't stop them from going out there and pursuing a PhD in robotics and trying to achieve their dreams. So the message here is, you're not always in the right place, but that's not an obligation. You don't have to be there. You're not a tree again. You have your roots there. That's true. That's your home. That's where you were born. That's where your part of your culture come from. But again, you can move out. You can search for better places, better opportunities. So don't be afraid to make a change in your life. That's the message. Don't be afraid to actually do a change, because that's what life about. It's about those decisions that we make and that have a big impact on our journey through existence. So yeah.
Thank you, Amin. Indeed, exploring options is a very important aspect, and all it takes is really one change at a time. Tanya, is there a message or lesson you'd like to share with us?
So, from my interaction with Dr. Shreya Santra, one thing that I imbibed from what she spoke is to believe in yourself. It is very important to believe in yourself, to pursue or wish for what you want and your end goal is in your future. One of the most important things that Dr. Shreya Santra has pursued is space robotics, a very niche field, and she took that bold step. So it is important to have that faith and confidence in yourself to go forward and prove yourself, not for the people who are talking, but also for a younger generation to inspire and look up to you. It is also important to look around and ask for assistance if you ever need any help with going for or searching for an opportunity, because there are always people who've gone through the similar situations who can always come forward and help you out. So always believe in yourself. It is only you and you who can do what you wish for and what you dream of.
That's very inspirational. Indeed, Tanya. And finally, Judith?
Yes, I would like to go back to something that Christian Jones mentioned in the episode that we recorded with her. It's a very simple sentence, but I think quite a powerful one also. You own to be here, no matter your background, no matter your gender, no matter who you are, what you did, you own to be here, and never forget it.
Thank you, Judith. That's indeed very powerful. Few words with a lot of impact. Every one of us can make a lot of change, no matter how big, how small it is. It's always a change that makes the humanity entirely and the society entirely progress towards the best. So thank you all for sharing these awesome and inspirational messages. I think this is very important for the younger generation to hear, since they are basically the ones who are going to shape the future of the space industry. So, I mean, is there any message that you'd like to share with students and young people to help them pursue their careers in this field?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, the I guess for me, like the most important message is this: don't be afraid to get lost. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Don't be afraid of asking the question, what am I going to do next? Because being a student is, we don't always have it figured out. We take one step at the time, one decision at the time. I feel passionate about aerospace, so I'm gonna do aerospace. But then you find out that probably this is not the best for you, or it can happen the other way around. You can pursue career in law, and then you figure out that you are interested in space, and then you combine all these passions into one, and you become a space lawyer or something. So this is the thing, that the decision that we make as students are not permanent. Once you decide to be something, doesn't mean that that thing, that career, that degree that you decide, it's going to define who you are for the rest of your life. You can always make a change. There is, yeah, that's the main thing, that as a student, don't be afraid of the unknown. Don't be afraid to be honest with yourself and go ahead and ask yourself what I want to do. Is this what I really want to do? Is there other thing that I want to do? Is there any other options that I want to explore? And once you ask yourself that, then the career will be, then you will find what you really want to do. And once you find that, then everything is easy. Then you know what is your next step. So to pursue a career in space, the main thing is to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, am I ready to fight for this career? Am I ready to take it to the next level and do everything I can for it? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead. Nothing actually stopping you. And we are in the age of technology and science, and it's an amazing time to be in the industry with all the amazing discoveries that we are going to do. We are planning to go back to the moon, to the Mars. We are planning to have new space exploration missions. So don't be afraid, don't be intimidated of taking that choice. And yes, it seems complicated. Yes, it seems hard, but every other field in life is hard. Every life, by definition, is hard. So if you are a student, be true to yourself. And once you are true to yourself and you made your decision, don't be afraid of the unknown. Jump on, go ahead, have faith in yourself, and then everything should go right.
That's a very powerful message, Amin. Thank you so much. Indeed, it's often basically this fear of the uncertainty, of the unknown, of stepping outside of our comfort zone that hinders our progress and makes us stuck, makes us feel that we're not progressing or we're not making an impact or we're not being valuable. All it really takes is just one step outside this comfort zone, following those dreams, following those was mentioned earlier, this basically gut feeling that this is not where I want to be. I want to do something else. Listen to that voice and go for it. And for sure it's gonna pay off. So speaking of this basically paying off and the long-term impacts, it's always the ultimate goal to have this long-term impact and even the short-term one. So Laura, how do you envision the space industry evolving over the next decade as a result of this increased diversity and equality?
Well, in space, sky is not the limit anymore, right? So I hope it will evolve only in positive outlook. To be more serious, studies showed that diversity is good for the industry. So we talked about it with Vera Pinto in some of our podcasts. And to me, better working conditions, less harassment at work, a better representation of minorities and women can only lead to new unprecedented projects and better profits. So yeah, I hope it will only get to many more positive outlooks for the space industry and others.
Thank you, Laura. Indeed, yes, we all look forward for that. So as we wrap up, what would be the call of action? A question, maybe Tanya, if you can answer. Can you share with our listeners how they can support this initiative and maybe contribute?
Yeah, sure. So, one thing that they can do is nominate people or guests they think they find inspirational or they want to hear them talk, and we can have them as guests and interview them. One of the most easiest way to spread a word or communicate about this podcast is just if you like it, tell more people about it. You can volunteer within SGAC. They have around 11 project groups with different projects and activities happening across the year. There are recruitment campaigns that audience can check on the SGAC website or social media. There are a lot of events and projects rolled out throughout the year by various SGAC project groups, such as the Space Generation Congress, local and regional events, and others. The Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group is also organizing the Our Giant Leap Hackathon. So please feel free to check them out. You can attend and participate and volunteer if you wish. There are also scholarships provided to help one attend these events and conferences. So go ahead and check out the website and get involved. It is a wonderful opportunity to get to know more people in the space industry, network with them, and learn about each and everyone's experiences and explore your knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for sharing all of these various ways that our audience and those who are interested in contributing basically to reach out and then to all as well be the voice of this change and towards a space segment or sector that's more diverse and more inclusive. And with that, I'd like to thank you all, Judith, Laura, Amin, and Tanya, for sharing your amazing experience and thoughts in today's panel. And of course, for your dedication to creating a positive change in the space industry. We look forward for sure to tuning in to our next Our Giant Leap podcast episodes. The Our Giant Leap podcast is brought to you by the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group of the Space Generation Advisory Council. You can interact directly with us on the project group's social media and leave us your feedback and recommendations. Thank you all for listening. I am your host, Sama, signing off.